my niece, to organize my will after William passed away. She brought folders, labels, and a soft voice that made me feel embarrassed for being grateful. I just want everything clear for you, she said. But after a health scare, I asked the probate clerk to confirm that the will in my safe was the one officially on record. The clerk opened my file, compared the pages, and went still. There were two versions. One left my home and savings exactly as William and I had planned. The other gave nearly everything to Ava. Same witnesses, same lawyer's name, same family details. But one version had appeared in the file months after my original was signed. The clerk looked at me and asked, "Mrs. Clark, did you ever authorize a replacement will?" I hadn't, and suddenly I knew Ava had not been organizing my future. She had been rewriting it. Subscribe for more evidence-driven family justice stories. And tell me, where would you keep the original copy of your will? For a few seconds, I could not answer the clerk. Her name tag said Maria Bell, Probate Records. She was a woman in her 50s, with silver threaded through her dark hair and the careful, quiet manner. She did not look accusing. That made it worse. "No," I finally said. "No, I never authorized anything new." Maria kept both documents flat on the counter between us. The office around us continued moving. A copier clicked somewhere behind a frosted glass partition. A man at the next window asked about a guardianship form. Somebody's little boy dragged a shoe across the tile floor, but at our window, the air had changed. "Mrs. Clark," Maria said. "All right," I nodded. "Did you ever meet with attorney Martin Hale after your husband passed?" "No." "Did you ever ask someone to make changes to your estate plan?" "No." "Did you ever sign documents in the presence of two witnesses named Leonard Price and Ellen Morris?" I looked down at the pages again. Those were the same two people who had witnessed the will William and I signed 5 years earlier. Leonard Price had been William's old supervisor at the library system. Ellen Morris had worked at the pharmacy on Main Street for almost 30 years. They were good people, familiar people. That was exactly why I had never questioned the names. "I signed one will with them," I said slowly. "The one I have in my safe. William and I made it together after he had his first heart surgery. We wanted everything settled while our minds were clear." Maria touched the edge of the second document with one finger. "This one is dated 11 months later. William had been dead for 8 months by then." I felt something cold move through my chest. I had spent nearly 3 years learning how grief changed the shape of ordinary things. It changed the empty side of the bed. It changed the sound of the back door closing. It changed grocery shopping. Because I still reached for the coffee William liked before remembering nobody needed it anymore. But grief had not made me foolish. It had only made me tired, and tired people can mistake help for safety. "I need to see it," I said. Maria hesitated. "I can show you the filing copy, but I would prefer that you sit down first." "I have been sitting down plenty since my fall," I told her. "Please let me see it." She studied my face, then led me through a side door into a small conference room with 2 padded chairs and a round table scarred by years of coffee cups and nervous hands. She placed both documents beside each other. The first was mine. I knew it before I read a word. The paper was thick and cream-colored. William had chosen it because he thought important papers should feel important. His signature curved slightly upward at the end, just as it always had. Mine was beside it, smaller and steadier. The document left me our home on Maple Ridge Drive, the savings we had built a little at a time, and the old Buick William insisted on maintaining long after our son said it belonged in a museum. After my death, what remained would be divided evenly between our son Daniel and our daughter Melissa. There was one smaller gift for Ava, the blue sapphire brooch that had belonged to William's mother. Ava had always admired it when she was young. That had been William's idea. "She should have something that reminds her we loved her," he had said. The second will had the same opening language, the same address, the same sentence about William dying before me, but by the second page it became a stranger's story. It said Daniel and Melissa would receive personal mementos at the discretion of the executor. It said Ava would inherit the house. Ava would inherit my savings. Ava would become executor of the estate, and have broad authority to sell, distribute, or dispose of property. My children, who had their flaws but had never asked me for my home, had been reduced to a sentence so thin it barely acknowledged that they existed. I read it twice, then a third time. "What is this?" I asked. Maria folded her hands. "This is a document delivered to our office 6 months ago as a replacement estate planning record." The submission included a cover letter indicating the original had been revised after your husband's death. Who brought it here? I cannot say more until our supervisor reviews the file, but I can tell you that the person who delivered it represented that she was assisting you. I did not need her to say Ava's name. I saw her instead, as she had been the first Sunday after William's funeral, standing in my kitchen with a stack of empty folders beneath one arm. She had worn a soft gray cardigan and no makeup except a little mascara. She had made chicken soup, even though I never asked her to. She had washed my dishes. Then she had stood at the kitchen table and gently moved the piles of bills I had been avoiding. "You shouldn't have to stare at paperwork right now, Aunt Rebecca," she had said. "Let me make a system." At the time, I almost cried from gratitude. Ava was my sister Lorraine's daughter. She was 36 years old, divorced, bright, and always moving through life as if one bad month stood between her and disaster. I had helped her twice before. Once, when she needed a security deposit after leaving her husband. Then again, when her car transmission failed and she needed to keep getting to work. She paid back part of the first loan.
Nothing from the second.
I had never pressed her.
William used to tell me I had a generous heart.
But he would say it with a look that warned me not to confuse generosity with surrender. After he died, I remembered only the kind part. Ava began coming every Tuesday evening. At first, she sorted bills into neat labeled folders: utilities, insurance, medical, household. She set up automatic payments for my electric bill and showed me how to see my account balance on the computer.
I had worked as a library assistant for nearly 30 years. I was not afraid of a computer. I had simply never cared for online banking when William was alive, because he enjoyed keeping the books in a little black ledger.
But Ava had a way of making every question sound like proof that she was rescuing me. "Don't worry," she would say, smiling. "I've got this." And I let her. That was the part I had to face in Maria Bell's conference room. I had let her. Not because I had given away my judgment. Because I had been lonely enough to mistake control for care. The first strange moment came 2 months after William's funeral. Ava was at my kitchen table, helping me sort through the mail, when she found a letter from Attorney Hale's office. Martin Hale had retired by then, and another firm had taken over the storage of his client files. Ava read the envelope before I could reach it. "What is this?" she asked. "Probably about the will," I said. "William and I signed it with Mr. Hale years ago." She looked up too quickly. "You already have one?" "Yes, it's in the safe. Shouldn't you update it now that Uncle William is gone?" I shook my head. "No, we planned for that. The will says what I want it to say." Ava gave a small laugh like I had misunderstood something simple. "Aunt Rebecca, that was before everything changed." "Some things changed," I said. "Not everything." She did not argue. Not then. She only slipped the letter back onto the table and said, "Of course. I just want to make sure nobody takes advantage of you." That sentence stayed with me afterward, because it was the sentence she used whenever she wanted to move one step closer to something that belonged to me. Nobody takes advantage of you. Nobody confuses you. Nobody pressures you. It sounded protective. Now I understood that she had been teaching me to see danger everywhere except in her. After Maria made copies of both documents,
she asked whether I had a safe at home.
"Yes. Does anyone else know the combination?" "Has anyone had access to your house recently while you were away?" The answer came to me before I wanted it to. 3 months earlier, I had spent 2 nights in St. Agnes Hospital after a dizzy spell and a fall in the laundry room. It was not a serious stroke. It was dehydration, low blood pressure, and the stubbornness of a woman who had been carrying grocery bags in from the car without asking for help. Ava had driven me to the hospital. Ava had brought me home. Ava had insisted she would stay at my house to keep an eye on things while I recovered. I had told her the spare key was in the ceramic bird by the back steps. She already knew that. Then I remembered another thing. When I came home, the safe door had been closed but not fully latched. I noticed it while putting away discharge papers. I had assumed I was the one who left it that way before the ambulance came. Now, sitting in that little conference room, I felt the weight of that memory settle into place. Ava stayed at my house when I was in the hospital, I said. Maria did not react dramatically. She only wrote it down. Did she have access to the safe? Possibly. Did you notice anything missing? I don't know. Then don't search alone, she said. Go home, make no accusations. And do not tell anyone what we discussed today until you have spoken with an estate attorney. The words were calm, but they landed like instructions during a fire. Do you think she forged it? Maria met my eyes. I think there is an apparent conflict between two documents. Our office will preserve the record and notify the appropriate parties within our process. But you should protect your original papers immediately. I looked down at the false will one last time. At the bottom of the second page, above the signatures, there was a sentence I had not noticed before. I appoint my beloved niece, Ava Monroe, as my trusted executor, in recognition of the care, loyalty, and support she has provided during my later years. It was written in language that sounded almost tender, but I could hear the lie inside every word. Ava had not been preparing to help me after I died. She had been preparing to decide what happened to everything I left behind. And for the first time since William's funeral, I stopped asking myself whether I was being unfair. I began asking what else she had touched. When I got home, I parked in the driveway and sat behind the wheel for nearly 10 minutes. My little brick house looked exactly as it had that morning. The flower boxes under the front windows were full of yellow petunias. William's wind chime moved softly beneath the porch roof. His old gardening gloves still hung beside the garage door, stiff with dried soil. Nothing looked stolen. Nothing looked broken. That was the cruelest part about betrayal. It rarely announces itself by smashing a window. Sometimes it comes through the front door carrying soup, folders, and a smile. I went inside, locked the deadbolt behind me, and stood in the hall staring at the framed photograph of William and me on our 25th anniversary. Then I walked to the study. The safe was hidden behind a painting William had bought at a church auction. A barn in winter. Bare trees. One yellow light glowing from a distant farmhouse. My hands shook as I turned the combination. The safe opened. Inside were my passport, the deed to the house, William's old black ledger, a velvet pouch holding my mother's wedding ring, and the original will. But one thing was missing. The envelope that had held our signed letter of instructions to Attorney Hale. The letter William wrote in his own hand. The one that explained exactly why we had divided everything as we did. I stood there with the safe open and the painting hanging crooked behind me. Ava had not merely copied a document. She had taken the one piece of paper that could prove she knew what William and I truly wanted. And suddenly, I remembered the day she had offered to organize my future. She had not come to help me find order. She had come to find the keys. I did not call Ava that night. Every instinct in me wanted to pick up the phone and demand an explanation. I wanted to hear her deny it. I wanted her to tell me there had been a mistake at the courthouse, that someone had used her name, that the missing letter would turn up under a stack of old magazines. But I had spent too many years working in a library not to understand the value of records. A book returned late could be forgiven. A missing page could change the entire story. So I did what Maria Bell told me to do. I locked the study door. I took photographs of everything inside the safe. I photographed the empty space where William's letter had been, the original will, the deed, the ledger, even the position of the velvet pouch holding my mother's ring. Then I called an estate attorney named Lorraine Kendrick. Mrs. Kendrick had been recommended by a woman from my church, and when I told her I needed an appointment about a possible unauthorized will, she did not sound shocked. She only asked whether I was safe, whether anyone else had access to my home, and whether I could come in first thing the next morning. I can, I said. Bring every document you have, she told me. And Mrs. Clark? Yes? Do not give anyone advance notice that you are reviewing your estate plan. The next morning, I sat across from Lorraine Kendrick in an office above a florist shop on Willow Street. She was younger than I expected, perhaps 45. with reading glasses resting low on her nose and a calm voice that made difficult words feel manageable. Her office smelled faintly of coffee and fresh paper. I handed her a neat stack of documents. My original will, the photographs from my safe, the copies Maria had made at Probate Records, and the folder Ava had created for me after William died. Lorraine opened the original will first. "This appears to be properly executed," she said after a few minutes. "The witnesses, the notary acknowledgement, the attorneys. Nothing jumps out as irregular." Then she read the second version. Her expression did not change much, but she sat up straighter. "This document was prepared to look familiar," she said. "That is deliberate." "What does that mean?" "It means whoever created it did not simply write a new will. They copied the structure of the earlier one. They preserved the same witnesses, the same name, the same personal details. They wanted it to look like a legitimate update to anyone who glanced at it." I felt my hands fold together in my lap. "But those witnesses never signed it," I said. "We cannot assume that yet," Lorraine replied. "But we can verify it." She pointed to the signature page. "Your signature on this second document is not identical to the original. It is close enough to make a family member hesitate. But it has several differences." I leaned forward. She showed me. On my real signature, the loop in the letter R was narrow and high. On the false one, it was broad and low. My last name on the original tilted slightly upward. The second one fell flat across the page. They were small details. But they were mine. For a moment, I felt ashamed that someone could imitate me well enough to make me question myself. Lorraine seemed to understand. "Mrs. Clark," she said, "this is not your fault. Fraud often depends on a victim feeling embarrassed. Please don't carry that for the person who made these choices." I looked at the second will again. Ava's name appeared 4 times on that page. Executor, beneficiary, trusted niece. It was amazing how many ways a person could write greed in formal language. Lorraine asked me to describe Ava's role in my life since William died, so I told her everything. I told her about the folders, the Tuesday visits, the passwords she had helped me reset, and the times she had offered to take papers to the bank or the post office. I told her about my hospital stay. Then I told her about William's missing letter. Lorraine stopped writing. What exactly was in that letter? Instructions for Attorney Hale. William wrote it after we signed the will. It explained why we divided things equally between Daniel and Melissa. It also said Ava was to receive his mother's sapphire brooch. "Did anyone besides you and William know about the letter?" "Ava may have heard us discuss the brooch. William told her once that his mother would have liked her." "And did Ava ever express disappointment about her own finances? Debt? Housing problems? A job loss?" I hesitated. Then I said, "She told me she was doing fine." Lorraine looked at me carefully. That wasn't my question. I took a breath. Ava had told me plenty over the last year, but never in a way that sounded like a request for help. Her rent had gone up. Her ex-husband had fallen behind on child support. Her catering business had lost a contract with a wedding venue. She had said all of it in the same gentle tone she used when talking about my bills. Like bad luck was a weather pattern that followed her around. 3 weeks before my fall, she had mentioned seeing my house's estimated value online. "Can you believe it?" she had said. "That little place is worth almost $300,000 now." I remembered laughing at the time. "It was little when William and I bought it," I said. "Now I suppose the town grew around us." Ava had looked out the kitchen window toward the backyard. "You could sell it and live anywhere you wanted." "No," I had told her. "I already live where I want." At the time, she smiled, but not with her eyes. Lorraine closed the folder. "Here is what we do next," she said. "We secure your legal documents, change access to your home and financial accounts, and request a formal review of the second document's submission. We also contact the witnesses and Attorney Hale's former office." "Will Ava be arrested?" Lorraine did not rush to answer. "First, we establish facts. If the evidence supports fraud, the appropriate authorities can decide what happens next. Our job is to protect you and make sure no one can use this document against you." I nodded. That was what I needed.
Not a promise of revenge, a plan.
By noon, Lorraine had arranged for my original will and related papers to be stored in her firm's secure vault. She told me I would receive written confirmation of every document she left in my possession and every document she took into safekeeping. She also helped me make a list, change the locks, change the safe combination, remove Ava as an emergency contact where she had access, call the bank, call my doctor's office, check my mail forwarding status, review every account Ava had helped me organize. The list was longer than I expected. So was the grief that came with it. On the drive home, I stopped at a small diner where William and I used to eat breakfast on Saturdays. I ordered tea and toast, then sat alone in the corner booth while rain tapped against the windows. At the next table, a young mother was helping her little girl cut pancakes into small squares. The child kept reaching for the syrup. The mother kept saying, "Not too much, sweetheart." I watched them longer than I should have. I thought about the years when Ava was little. Her mother, my sister Lorraine, worked double shifts at a nursing home. Ava spent many afternoons at my house after school. She would sit at my kitchen counter with her homework spread out in front of her, twisting her long braids around one finger while William made grilled cheese sandwiches. When she was 8, she had a habit of saving the crusts from her sandwiches because she believed birds needed them more than people did. William adored her. So did I. I had held her when she cried after her parents separated. I had helped pay for her school clothes. I had gone to her graduation, her wedding, and later, her divorce hearing when she was too frightened to walk into the courthouse alone. I had never once imagined that the child who called me Aunt Becca would someday sit at my kitchen table and calculate what my house was worth. By the time I got home, the rain had stopped. Ava's car was parked across the street. For 1 second, I considered driving past my own home. Then I saw her standing beneath my porch light, holding a grocery bag in one hand and looking at her phone. She had used the old spare key before, I knew that, but this time she was waiting outside. Perhaps she had sensed something had changed. Perhaps she had already been to the house and discovered the key no longer opened the back door. When she saw me pull in, she lifted the grocery bag with a smile. "I brought you that soup you like," she said. I got out of the car slowly. "Ava," I said, "why are you here?" Her smile trembled at the edges. "Because I worry about you. You didn't answer my call this morning. I had an appointment." "What kind of appointment?" I looked at her. The question came out too quickly. "Not Aunt Rebecca, are you feeling better? Not is everything all right? What kind of appointment?" I had heard... "Personal business," I said. She walked closer.
You seem upset.
Before I knew what I was handing over. I thought of Lorraine Kendrick's words, "Do not give anyone advance notice." So I took the grocery bag from Ava and said, "Thank you." That was thoughtful. For a moment, relief crossed her face. Then she looked past me toward the house. "Do you want me to come in and make sure everything is okay?" "No."
It was only one word, but it was the first time I had said it to her without adding an apology.
Ava blinked. "You don't want me to help?" I said no. She stood on my porch with the rainwater still shining on the sidewalk between us. Then her face changed. Not completely, just enough. The warmth drained away, leaving something hard and wounded beneath it. "I'm trying to be there for you," she said. "Ever since Uncle William died, I've been the one checking on you. I've been the one helping you keep everything together." "I know. And I don't understand why you're suddenly acting like I've done something wrong." My heart beat once, heavily. She did not know what I had found. Not yet. But she was already defending herself. I looked down at the soup in my hands. "You should go home, Ava." Her mouth opened, then closed. "Fine," she said. She walked down the steps, but before she reached her car, she turned back. "Just be careful who you listen to, Aunt Rebecca. People see an older woman alone and they think they can scare her into making bad decisions." Then she got into her car and drove away. I stood under the porch light until I could no longer see her taillights. Then I went inside, locked the door, and called the locksmith. The next morning, Lorraine's office called with the first answer. Attorney Martin Hale had died the year before William did, but his former legal assistant, a woman named Diane Cooper, had worked with him for 22 years and still handled archived files for the firm that took over his practice. Diane remembered William. She remembered me, and she remembered the letter. She says, Mr. Clark asked that the letter be scanned into the client archive along with the signed will, Lorraine told me. I sat very still. Then there is a copy? There may be. Diane is checking the archive now. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 2 days, I felt something that was not fear. It was not relief, exactly. It was direction. William's handwriting might still exist somewhere beyond Ava's reach. But Lorraine had more news. The witnesses have also been contacted, she said. Mr. Price was surprised to hear from us. Mrs. Morris is traveling and has not returned our call yet. What did Mr. Price say? He said he signed one will for you and William. He does not remember witnessing any updated will after Mr. Clark's death. The room seemed to narrow around me. One witness, one missing letter, one false document with my name written across it. I thought that was enough to make Ava afraid. Then Lorraine said, There is one more thing. What, Mr.
Price.
Attorney Hale gave you and William a blue embossed folder. He said the firm only used those folders for executed estate documents. Did you ever have one? Yes, I said. It was in the safe. Is it still there? I looked toward the study. The blue folder had been missing too. I had been so focused on the letter that I had not noticed. Ava had taken more than a page. She had taken the original folder, the instructions, and perhaps anything else she thought could connect her to the truth. That afternoon, I went through every drawer in my house. Not wildly, not in panic, methodically. I wrote down what I found and what I did not. In the bottom drawer of the desk, beneath old birthday cards and instruction manuals, I found a small spiral notebook in Ava's handwriting. She must have left it there by mistake. Most of the pages were lists, my utility due dates, the number for the pharmacy, a reminder to schedule my furnace inspection. But near the back, written on a page torn halfway across, were 3 lines that made my breath catch. Safe code changed after hospital. Need get Hale letter before Rebecca asks questions. Ask Daniel about key. Don't let him know why. I read those words until the ink blurred. Then I turned the page. There was one final note beneath a list of dates. Courier drop-off, June 18. Clerk said sealed envelope accepted. June 18. The exact date printed on the false will's courthouse submission. I placed the notebook inside a clear plastic folder, took photographs of every page, and called Lorraine Kendrick. Ava left something behind, I told her. What is it? A list. I swallowed, and I think it proves she was planning this before I ever knew there were 2 versions of my will. Lorraine was silent for only a moment. Do not confront her, she said. Bring that notebook to my office. We may finally have the beginning of the evidence chain. I looked out through the study window. Across the backyard, William's old wind chime moved in the late afternoon breeze. The sound was gentle, but I was no longer listening for comfort. I was listening for the truth. Lorraine Kendrick did not let me carry the notebook into her office myself. When I arrived the next morning, her assistant met me downstairs with a clear evidence sleeve and asked me to place it inside without touching any more pages. It felt strange to watch something so small become so serious. A spiral notebook, a few lists, a few lines written in blue ink, but those lines had turned my fear into a timeline. Ava knew when I had been in the hospital. She knew the safe code had changed. She knew about William's letter, and she knew exactly when the false will had been delivered. Lorraine brought me into the conference room and placed a copy of the notebook page beside a print calendar. June 18th, she said. That date matters. It is the day the false will was submitted. Yes, and we received information from probate records this morning. The clerk's office has an intake log for the sealed envelope. I held my breath. Does it have Ava's name? Not exactly. The person who delivered the envelope signed only A, Monroe as the submitting representative. My hands tightened around my purse. But they recorded something else. Lorraine slid another paper toward me. It was a photocopy of a driver's license presented at the courthouse window for identification. Ava Monroe. There was her picture, her address, her date of birth, her signature. For a long moment, I did not speak. I had imagined many possibilities during those sleepless nights. I had imagined Ava hiring someone. I had imagined a misunderstanding involving a form she did not read. I had even imagined that the courthouse had mixed up documents. Another family. But there was no mix-up in that picture. Ava had stood at that counter herself. She had handed over a document that gave her my house, the power to decide what became of the life William and I built, and she had done it while smiling at me every Tuesday evening. "Did the clerk know it wasn't me?" I asked. "The submission form represented that you had authorized delivery. The office preserves documents. It does not decide whether a will is valid at the counter. That is why this was able to sit in the file until you asked for confirmation." Lorraine spoke gently, but I heard the hard truth beneath her words. Ava had counted on nobody looking too closely, not until I was gone. She had counted on grief making me passive. She had counted on age making people believe I would be too confused, too tired, or too grateful to ask a question. Lorraine leaned forward. "There is more." Diane Cooper found the archived scan of William's letter. I looked up so fast my glasses slipped down my nose. "You have it?" "She does." Lorraine opened a folder and removed a color copy. I knew William's handwriting before I read the first sentence. His letters were careful and square. He pressed too hard with a pen, always leaving a faint ridge on the page. He never crossed out a word. If he made a mistake, he started the whole page over. "Dear Martin, Rebecca and I have talked this through carefully. We want Daniel and Melissa treated equally, not because either child is perfect, but because both are our children and both have been part of our lives. Ava is dear to us. We hope she will remember us warmly. The sapphire brooch should go to her because my mother loved her spirit. But the house, savings, and the things Rebecca and I worked for together are not to be used to solve another person's problems." William had written that sentence nearly 6 years earlier, not to punish Ava, not because he had suspected her of anything. He had written it because he was practical and because he understood something I had not wanted to see. Love could make you generous, but love did not require you to hand someone the keys to your future. I cried when I read the letter. Not loudly, just quietly, with my hand covering my mouth while Lorraine looked away and gave me the dignity of not being watched. When I had steadied myself, she pointed to the bottom of the page. There was a handwritten note from Attorney Hale. "Client instructed that this letter is explanatory only and does not replace the signed will. Scan retained with estate planning file."
"Diane can authenticate the archive record," Lorraine said.
"And Attorney Hale's former firm has the electronic file history showing that no revision was ever prepared for you after William died. So Ava used his name. It appears so." I looked back at the false will. Ava had not merely changed a few numbers or added a note. She had borrowed the name of a dead attorney, copied the names of witnesses who had never been asked, and placed my signature beneath words I never agreed to. She had created a future where my children became strangers and she became the owner of everything. "How?" I asked. Lorraine. "We will file documents making clear that you dispute and revoke any purported replacement will. We will provide the evidence to probate court records and request a formal review. Since there are signs of possible forgery and false submission, the matter may be referred for investigation. Maybe investigators and prosecutors decide what charges, if any, are appropriate. But the evidence is strong enough that this will not disappear into a misunderstanding." That was all I needed to hear. I did not need to imagine Ava in handcuffs. I did not need to make her suffer to prove I had been hurt. I needed the truth placed where it could not be rewritten.
2 days later, the second witness called. Ellen Morris had returned from visiting her sister in Michigan. Lorraine put her on speakerphone with my permission. "Rebecca?" Ellen said, her voice full of concern. "Honey."
"I am so sorry you're going through this. Did you sign another will for me after William died?" I asked. "No, Lord, no. Did anyone ask you to?" There was a pause. Then Ellen said, "Ava called me last spring. She said you were updating signs." She never called again.
The room.
"What else did she say?" Lorraine asked. "She said Aunt Rebecca gets overwhelmed by legal things, so Ava was trying to make it easier." I thought it sounded a little odd, but I didn't think. I never imagined this. Neither had I. Ellen agreed to provide a written statement. Leonard Price had already done the same, and the more evidence Lorraine gathered, the clearer the picture became. Ava had been struggling financially for months. Her catering business had not merely lost one contract. It had been behind on vendor payments. She had used a business credit card to cover rent. She had borrowed money from 2 friends and told each of them the other had already helped her. Then she had found something even more valuable than a new client. She had found an aunt who was grieving, an aunt with a paid-off house, an aunt who trusted her. The official meeting was scheduled for the following Monday at the probate courthouse. Lorraine explained that it was not a trial. It was an administrative review of the disputed document and the records surrounding its submission. I would not be expected to perform my pain for anyone. I would only need to answer questions truthfully. Still, I barely slept the night before. I lay awake listening to rain against the bedroom window, remembering Ava at 8 years old with sandwich crusts in a napkin, remembering her at 16, crying after her father forgot to pick her up from school, remembering the way she held my hand at William's funeral and whispered, "I'm here, Aunt Becca." I kept asking myself one question. When had that girl disappeared? But by morning, I understood that was the wrong question. The girl I loved had grown into a woman who made choices, and those choices had consequences. The courthouse conference rooms was larger than Maria Bell's little office. There was a long table, a court representative, Maria from Probate Records, Lorraine Kendrick, and a county investigator who introduced himself as Mr. Alvarez. Then Ava came in. She wore a navy blouse and a gray blazer. Her hair was pulled back neatly. From a distance, she looked exactly like the responsible niece she had pretended to be. But when her eyes met mine, she knew. She knew I had found more than 2 pieces of paper. She sat across from me without speaking. Mr. Alvarez began by explaining that the review concerned a disputed document filed under my name. He asked whether I recognized the second will. "I do now," I said. "Did you sign it?" "No." "Did you?" "No." He asked whether I had appointed Ava Monroe to act on my behalf. "No." Then Lorraine presented the evidence, the original will, the archived scan of William's letter, the former law firm's file history, the written statements from Leonard and Ellen, the courthouse intake log and Ava's identification copy, and finally, the notebook. Ava stared at it. For the first time since she entered the room, her face lost all color. "Mr. Alvarez read the relevant lines aloud. Need get Hale letter before Rebecca asks questions. Courier drop-off. June 18. Clerk said sealed envelope accepted." Ava's mouth opened. "That notebook doesn't prove I forged anything." "No," Lorraine said quietly. "Not by itself." Then she placed a copy of a text message on the table. Diane Cooper had found it in the archived firm email account. It was an email Ava had sent 3 months after William's death, pretending to be me.
The message asked for a copy of my most recent executed estate plan because the original had been damaged in a water leak. But Ava had sent it from an email address 1 letter different from mine.
Rebecca Clark 197, instead of Rebecca Clark 196. The firm had not sent the document because Diane noticed the address did not match the client file, but the email had been preserved in their records. Ava looked at the page, then looked at me. "I was trying to help you," she said. The words sounded smaller than they ever had in my kitchen. "You were trying to help yourself," I said, her eyes filled with tears. "I was desperate. So you decided my children should lose their inheritance? I thought you didn't need all of it." That sentence hurt more than I expected. Not because it was clever, because it was honest. Ava had looked at my home, my savings, and William's life beside mine, and decided I had more than she deserved to want. "You do not get to decide what I need," I told her, "and you do not get to decide what William and I leave behind." She began to cry then. She said she had planned to fix it. She said she never meant for anyone to be hurt. She said she only wanted time to get back on her feet, but every excuse came after the evidence, not before. Mr. Alvarez told her that the matter would be reviewed as a possible criminal offense, and that she should speak with legal counsel. He did not raise his voice. Nobody did. The room did not need drama. The truth had already done its work. Ava left the courthouse with her attorney later that afternoon. I watched from the window as she walked across the parking lot alone. A part of me wanted to run after her, to ask whether she was frightened, to ask whether she had eaten, to ask if the pain in her face was real. But love had brought me to that edge too many times. I had spent years believing that if I understood someone's suffering, I was responsible for protecting them from the consequences of what they did. That day, I learned I could care about Ava's future without surrendering mine. Over the next several weeks, Lorraine completed the work that should never have been necessary. The false document was formally marked as disputed and removed from any claim of authority over my estate plan. My valid will remained protected in secure storage. I signed an updated estate plan with new witnesses, a new attorney, and clear instructions that no one could access or alter my documents without my direct confirmation. I also created a small emergency binder, not because I wanted to live in fear, because I wanted my wishes to be easy to find. My doctor's contact information, my attorney's number, a list of my accounts, a note explaining where my legal documents were stored, and one sentence William would have appreciated. No person is authorized to make decisions for me unless I say so in writing, while fully informed and present. Daniel and Melissa came over the Sunday after everything was settled. I had dreaded telling them the full story. I worried they would be hurt by what Ava tried to do. I worried they would blame me for trusting her. I worried grief would split our family into sides. But Daniel only sat at my kitchen table with his elbows on his knees and said, "Mom, you should never have had to handle this alone." Melissa reached across the table and took my hand. "We're not angry at you," she said. "We're angry that somebody made you feel like you had to prove you were still capable of making your own decisions." That was the moment I finally cried without shame, not because I was weak, because I was no longer carrying the whole thing by myself. Ava later sent me a letter through her attorney. It was 3 pages long. She apologized. She blamed debt. She blamed fear. She blamed the panic of watching her business fail. She said she would accept counseling and repay any costs I had incurred. I read it once. Then I gave it to Lorraine. I did not write back right away. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would have to grow slowly and honestly. It would not be a door Ava could walk through simply because she had finally been caught outside it. Months later, I planted yellow petunias beneath my front windows again. William always said they looked like little pieces of sunlight. One warm evening, I sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea and listened to the wind chime he had hung there himself. The house was still mine. The choices were still mine. The future was still mine, and that was enough. If this story reminded you that protecting your wishes is an act of love, please like this video, subscribe for more evidence-driven family justice, and share your thoughts in the comments. Should forgiveness ever include restoring access to the person who betrayed your trust?